XLN Audio have just released a major update to Addictive Drums 2, and it's absolutely free. This video is sponsored by DistroKid. Follow the VIP link in the description down below to get 7% off an already amazing price to distribute your music to the world. Addictive Drums 2 was released 10 years ago. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been eagerly awaiting version 3 for quite some time now, so I was a little surprised just the other day to find they'd finally released version 2.5. Now, interestingly, this is no minor update. There's actually a significant improvement to the UI and a few new features thrown in. But perhaps one of the most interesting things about this update is that it's completely free for existing users. Yeah, even if you bought this plugin 10 years ago, you get this major update completely free. I think that's pretty amazing. So let's dive in and find out what's new. So it's out with the old kind of bubble metallic look that we've grown used to over all of these years, and with this new update we have a much flatter look. Now there's still some 3D elements to it with the knobs and the sliders, which I rather like. However, I really do like this new flat, less cluttered look. Overall, I find it more pleasing to look at for long periods of time, and I find it a little bit easier to find things because I think the labels and things are clearer. But it's not all about just new looks. They've thought about the way the UI is working as well. So for example, in the kit view, where I spend quite a lot of time, you can see with the drums at the top here that they're surrounded by all of these buttons and things, and that looks quite cluttered. In the new version, what they've done is they're only showing those buttons when you actually move your mouse over those drums. So it makes for a much sort of less cluttered look. Look at the old one here with all the buttons around it, and then the new one here. It looks much cleaner, and the drums are a little bit sort of bigger and bolder as well. So I really like this view. Now, one view where I didn't spend much time with the old version was with the beats view. And now that's not because there's so much anything wrong with the view, but because this is not my kind of workflow. I tend to write my own drum parts. But maybe it is because of this view that I didn't really understand some of the features that were available. And for me, in the new version, it entices me a little bit more. And in this view, basically, there's some very useful features which make your drums a little bit more human. We'll be looking at those later. But one thing I did notice, by the way, was that my MIDI packs are much more apparently available here on the left-hand side than they were in the old version. So this is a nice improvement overall. Now finally, I just want to mention the main view that you tend to see when you insert the plugin, and that's the gallery view. So with this view, you could sort of scroll through some of the available kits to make your overall choice, if you like, for the song that you'll be working on. And then you may move to the explore view, where you can try some different presets to get a basic sort of setting for your kit. Well, with the new version, they've sort of put that all into one view, if you like. It's all called the Explore view. You can still use those big left and right arrows on the left and right to scroll through your different kits, but you haven't got these two separate views. You've got the presets available right there on the left hand side. And overall, I like this. At first I was a little bit like, oh, I missed the sort of sliding kits going across the screen, but obviously this is a lot more efficient. And I think they've actually updated quite a lot of the artwork for some of these kits as well, which is quite a major undertaking for a free upgrade. Now let's move on to some of the new features. One of the new features in this update is the Trig Gate. Now you get to it by clicking on the Send Effects section over here, revealing your two effect sends in Addictive Drums. Now I'm going to use the second one here, and you can see over on the right hand side that the Trig Gate is currently disabled. I'm going to leave it like that for a moment while I set up my snare with a huge reverb that I've created on this effect send. So let's do that now. I'm going to blend this in. And as you can hear, that's a massive reverb. And now I want to gate that. So I'm going to enable my Trig Gate over here. Now you don't have to set up a threshold or anything like that like you normally do with a gate, because it's actually being triggered by the MIDI information. So whenever the snare is actually hit. Now the first thing I'm going to do is adjust this hold time, because at the moment it's not going to make much difference because it's so long. So let's shorten it and hear the difference. And you can already hear that kind of gated effect. But let's make it much more aggressive by adjusting the release time down here. And there you can hear that classic gated snare sound. Another new feature is the compressor boost mode. Now I'm going to apply this to my kick drum, so I'll click on my kick drum over here, and then I'll go up and switch my compressor on like so. I'm just going to start off with a basic setup by lowering this threshold so that we start to hear and see some compression. Okay, so the kick is just being accentuated a little bit here, but if I really want to add some extra thump, I can use this new boost mode by clicking on this rocket here. I'll start off with it off, and then I'll switch it off and on so you can hear the difference. So it's just a little bit more aggressive. Now, just in case you couldn't really hear that, I'll solo the kick now and you can have another listen. Just a little bit of extra thump there. Now, one of the things you may already have noticed is that there's been some improvements to the EQ section, most notably, I suppose, with the visualization or the spectrum analyzer that we see. Let's have a look at it on this snare at the moment. Now, of course, you do need to mix with your ears, and these things can be a bit of a distraction, but there is really a use to it. I feel you can sort of see the effects that your moves are making. It's also helpful, for example, for identifying perhaps the fundamental of something like this snare. So if we play it again, you'll see a big bump around this area, and that is the fundamental. So that visualization maybe just makes it a bit easier for me to find out exactly where it is, and I might boost it or cut it. And you know what? That might also be useful if you want to get that fundamental at a certain pitch by adjusting the pitch up here. So let's do that and have a look at how the fundamental is changing. Now, that's the main thing that XLN Audio talked about when they released this. However, I've noticed another couple of things that they maybe didn't get into so much. First of all, I think basically there's been some improvements with the low cut and high cut filters. They're just a bit easier to sort of grab and manipulate, I feel, compared to the old version. And also we're getting an extra band of EQ. So you can see 5 bands of EQ here. If we look at the old version of the plugin, you can see there was only 4 bands of EQ there. So some nice improvements there to our EQ section. Now, I must admit to being a little confused about this next feature. But before I tell you why, I just want to remind you, if you're releasing your music to places like Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, etc., don't forget to follow the link in the description down below to our sponsor DistroKid. If you do follow that VIP link, you'll get 7% off of your first year of membership. Now, I must admit, I'm a little confused about this one. They did announce the Beat Transformer as a new feature for this release. They put it in their own videos as well. The reason I'm confused is because I'm quite sure it was in the old version, as we can see here over on the right hand side. Now, perhaps they've just updated it under the hood or something like that. I'm not sure, but I do have to say, if it wasn't new, it was at least new to me. I've very rarely used it, at least, and I think it's quite interesting. So that's why I'm going to show it to you now, regardless of whether it's new or not. This is a great feature in terms of if you're using the beats section of Addictive Drums for getting a different feel to the beats that you've got. And it does it in several different ways, mostly dealing with velocity. Let's start off by taking a look at this feature over here, the range feature. And as I play my beat, I'm simply going to move it up and down, and you'll hear the difference in feel right away. Now, it's important to note here, we're not simply making it louder. This isn't like a mix control. This is changing the velocities. So when a drummer hits a drum harder, of course, it doesn't just get louder, it sounds different. Okay, so this is what the effect is here. Now, we can also change the dynamic range of that playing, if you like, with these handles at the top and the bottom. So if I want to make sure that all of the drums are always being played relatively lightly, for example, I could pull this down like so and have a listen now. And then I could push it up to make sure the drummer's playing really loud all the time. So that gives you basic control over the dynamics of the actual playing. So I really like that feature. The other thing we can do, and this can make a big difference to the feel of the beat, is choose how much we're accentuating the quarter and the eighth beats. I'll mostly use the quarter beats here, but I'll play around with the eighth beats as well, and really have a listen to the difference this makes to the feel of the beat. You could especially hear it there on the hi-hat, yeah, so that's a really nice feature. The other thing we can do is randomize both the timing and the velocity as well, so that we're not just hearing the same thing over and over again. I'll do it with the timing, and I'm going to push it pretty hard. It's going to sound pretty awful, but it'll give you a good idea of what it's actually doing. So we got to a stage there where if that was the drummer, you'd fire the drummer and use Addictive Drums instead. Now, the other thing we can do is adjust the velocity of individual drums, and that can make a huge difference to the feel. We'll do it this time with the hi-hat. Have a listen to the difference it's making. And again, we're not simply adjusting the volume like we would on the mixer here. It is the velocity, and it's nice because it still keeps the actual relative differences in the velocities in the performance, but it's just moving them all up and down. So I like that. Now, another cool thing we can do, if you like the beat, you can also swap the articulations out for different drums. So for example, with a snare, you know, it could be a regular hit, it could be, you know, a side stick or some other way that you'll hit the snare. So you can reassign that over here. So I'm going to do that now and have a listen to the difference in the snare. So lots of different ways with this beat transformer to change these kind of preset beats, if you like, much more to your liking and sort of humanize them as well. Now, I must admit, I'm incredibly surprised at the quality of this update, especially considering it's free to existing users. Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. I'm Mike. I do hope you're well, and I'll see you in the next video.